Hi, everyone, and welcome to Brian's Horror Corner. I'm your host, Brian, and welcome to the Classic Twilight Zone series review. Today, we're going to take a look at season two of the original Twilight Zone, which ran from 1959 to 1964. I reviewed season one, and that's up on my channel if you want to check it out about a week ago. So, check out season one. But today, we're going to talk about season two. And I'm going to do kind of the same format where I give you my most underrated episode of season two, my most overrated episode of season two, and then my bottom three, including a dishonorable mention for worst episodes, in my opinion, and then my top five, including an honorable mention for season two. So to start out, just some general thoughts about season two. There's three different points I want to make as far as things that change. First of all, starting in season two, Rod Serling introduces, he's actually on camera at the beginning of each episode, sort of telling us what the story is about instead of being off camera and just hearing his voice. And in addition to that, they also use a different theme, more of the traditional Twilight Zone theme song that we think about instead of that wah wah that they used for season one to start with. So those are two changes. Also, they decreased the amount of episodes. There was 36 episodes in season one. Season two only has 29 episodes. I say only, that's still a lot of episodes, but it's quite a bit less than season one, and a couple other seasons coming up. Um, and then the third thing, which is kind of controversial, it was a money saving idea. There's a number of episodes in season two that they shot on videotape instead of film to save money. I think I want to say there's at least five or six that are videotaped episodes, and you can tell the difference, obviously. Um, they did. I think this is the only season they did that in. Season one doesn't have any, and I don't think any of the seasons after this have any. But season two, I don't know why they chose to, well, I know why they chose to do it because it's cheaper. But you would think of all the seasons where this one has the least amount of episodes, at least for half hour episodes, you would have thought that they might have done it in a season that had more episodes. But whatever. Those are the three big changes or distinctions for season two, I would say. So let's just go ahead and get into it here. Season two is still a really good Twilight Zone season. It's not as strong as season one. It actually takes a little while to get going. Like the first 10 or 15 episodes, in my opinion, only has about three or four good to really good episodes. The rest are just kind of meh. They're just kind of okay to being bad, in my opinion. But then the season really, after about the halfway point, it really takes off, and we have some all-time great episodes in the second half of season two, in my opinion. But season one, from start to finish, was pretty much, it was rare that you got a clunker in season one. There were a few, but you didn't have big gaps. So season two is a really good season. Not, but like I said, not as strong as season one. So I'll just go ahead and get started with my most overrated and most underrated episodes of season two. So, starting with my most underrated episode, we're going to go towards later in the season here. And I have to find it in my notes. Oh, I didn't circle. Okay, it's episode 24 of season two, entitled The Rip Van Winkle Caper, that aired on April 21st, 1961. This is about a gang of gold thieves, basically, that use suspended animation chambers set to revive them in 100 years to evade the authorities. This one, it's got really good acting. It's got a really good story. You could say that the suspended animation's a little bit out there, but basically in modern time, which when this was shot was 1961, they basically are in suspended animation for 100 years, and then they come out thinking that nobody's going to be looking for them with the gold that they stole. But the show, as most Twilight Zone does, most Twilight. Let me rephrase this now, if I can get my words out without the dribble. Like most Twilight Zone episodes, this one has a really good twist, and it really works well in this episode, in my opinion, to the point where it's got to be my most underrated episode just from the twist. I just really liked it. What you find out at the end of this episode, yeah, like I said, it's got a nice setting. It's got good characters. a good story, even though it's a little bit out there with the suspended animation. But this is an underrated episode, in my opinion. I never really hear anybody talk about this episode. I don't think it's hated, but it's just kind of there. And I think it's more than just there. I think this is a really good Twilight Zone episode. So that's my most underrated, the Rip Van Winkle Caper from season two. My most overrated, and I'll probably take some crap for this. First, let me preface by saying I really like this episode. It's definitely a very solid, good Twilight Zone episode that aired early in the season. It's episode 7 entitled Nick of Time. Um, but I've never really understood the absolute love for this episode. I mean, some people consider this a Twilight Zone series classic, and I just don't really see that. I think it's like I said, much like Time Enough at Last, it's a really, really good episode, really solid. I would never skip it if I'm doing a marathon, but all-time classic, I don't know. I don't think so. Not for me anyway. Bill Shatner's in it, obviously, and he gives a good performance, as does the gal that's in it, Patricia Breslin. It basically has to do with a superstitious newlywed, um, Bill Shatner, who becomes convinced that there's this fortune telling machine whose predictions are quite accurate, and basically he's trying to base his life on it. And I don't know, it's interesting, and like I said, the acting's really good, but not really much happens in this episode. Not to the point where it's an all-time classic anyway. Again, don't get me wrong. No, it's a very good episode. I'm not saying that it's bad, but that's my most overrated, just in terms of what I know that's out there. Nick of Time, episode 7 from season 2. Okay, now we'll get into I'll start with my bottom three, starting with my dishonorable mention for season 2. And my dishonorable mention is going to be The Lateness of the Hour, it's entitled, which is episode 8 from season 2 that aired on December 2nd, 1960. Um, this is about a woman that disapproves of the robot servants that her father has created. Um, this episode has a few problems with it. The acting's not really that great in it. And I like Inger Stevens. She's in a really good Twilight Zone episode from season 1 entitled The Hitchhike. But in this episode, I don't know. She just doesn't. She's supposed to be sympathetic, and she's really not. She's just more annoying than anything. Plus, this is one. I think this might be the first videotaped episode of one of the first video. I think it might be the first videotaped episode of season 2, which kind of takes away a little bit from it. I'm not a fan of the videotaped episodes. There's only one that I think works to its benefit in season 2, and I'll get to that in a little bit. But yeah, I don't know. It's just not that interesting of a concept, but it's even less well executed, if that makes sense. So the lateness of the hour, that's going to be my dishonorable mention, but I can watch it. It's not the worst episode, which is why it's my dishonorable mention. Coming in at number 3 is going to be second to the last, or third to the last episode, I should say, of season 2, entitled "The Mind and the Matter," that aired on May 12th, 1961. This is about a man played by Shelley Berman who uses the power of concentration to remake the world in his image, which sounds like an interesting concept. It's very Twilight Zoney, but the character's not really my favorite. He's just kind of annoying, and they just don't really execute this episode that well. This is an episode that has an interesting premise, but not well executed at all. I was kind of bored through it, to be honest with you. So that's why it's my number 3, The Mind and the Matter. Number 2 was easy for me. This is an episode I'd probably skip, and that's The Man in the Bottle, the episode 2 from season 2 that aired on October 7th, 1960. This is the one where a genie grants 4 wishes to an unsuccessful pawnbroker and his wife. Um, yeah, there's lots of problems with this episode. Again, I was kind of bored by it, but also the choices they made were just ridiculous. Especially when he decides, well, I don't want to give too much away with these. Just like season 1, I'm going to try not to give big spoilers away. Just the premise of the episode. But let's just say with the wishes they have, they do things that not only do they not make sense, but what ends up resulting from these wishes is absolutely ridiculous. I was laughing my ass off, and not in a good way, towards the episode. It's just, I know it's meant to be sort of a light and funny, humorous episode, but I wasn't laughing because of the humor in the episode. I was laughing at how bad the episode was. So that's The Man in the Bottle, episode 2. The Genie in a Bottle episodes, The Twilight Zone tried a few different times with them, and as we go into later seasons, we'll see if they succeeded better than this one. But they're kind of hard to do, I think, especially in the 1960s. But yeah, this episode just doesn't nail it at all. But of course, there can only be one number one for season two, and that was another easy choice. And that's about the halfway point of the season before the episodes really started getting good. And that's entitled The Whole Truth, aired on January 20th, 1961, where a used car dealer, played by Jack Carson, is forced to tell the truth after buying a car from an old man who says it's haunted. Just reading that alone, I'm annoyed as hell by this episode. And then when you actually watch it, you're even more annoyed if that's possible. Again, this was supposed to be another humorous episode that doesn't work at all, in my opinion. And how the episode ends is just, it's like, it's one of those WTF moments. It's like, what? Rod Serling's a good writer, but Rod, were you drunk or something this week? I mean, the whole truth is going to be a legitimate contender for the one of the if I should say it's going to be a legitimate contender for the worst episode in the Twilight Zone series. Now, will it be the worst? We don't know yet because I still have 3 more seasons to go after this one. But I can tell you it's going to be in contention. So if you're rooting for it, stay tuned. But yeah, the whole truth just didn't work for me at all. This was another videotaped episode as well, which you can tell, and it doesn't it doesn't hurt the episode because the episode's so bad it would have been bad in film too, but it certainly doesn't help it. So yeah, those are my bottom 3: Mind in the Matter, The Man in the Bottle, and The Whole Truth, with The Lateness of the Hour being a dishonorable mention. Now on to bigger and better things for season 2, and there are a lot of great episodes, and there's some that I even left out. First, I want to mention the one that I'm not going to mention, is even my honorable mention, is 22. The reason I want to mention this one is this is the one videotaped episode that I think actually worked for what they were going for in this episode. This is about a woman, a dancer, that's hospitalized for exhaustion. She has a recurring nightmare in which she's led to room 22, which is the morgue, by a sinister nurse played by Arlene Martel. And I have to say, Arlene Martel is really good in this role. She comes across creepy, but she's also beautiful as hell too in this episode. I think she just recently passed away too, so rest in peace to her. But I really enjoy this episode. It basically just missed. If I were doing a top 7 episodes of season 2, it would have made it. But I wanted to mention that that's the one videotaped episode that I think actually works to its benefit because of it feels so real. It has a very real feel to it, like somebody's just videotaping this real thing that's happening. So for that episode, it works well. Okay, now we'll get to my top 5, starting with my honorable mention, which is going to be one of the few episodes early in the season that I actually think is really good, and that's The Howling Man, episode 5, that aired on November 4th, 1960, written by Charles Boma. This is the one about a man who's lost in a storm that finds a monastery where the monks claim a howling prisoner is the devil himself. And this episode's so atmospheric. It just reminds you of like an old monster movie or something. Yeah, the atmosphere, the camera work that's done in this episode, that's enough right there to make it mentioned as one of the better ones in season 2. Whether the story or not works for you all the way through, it really depends on what you believe, heaven and hell and all that stuff. But it's effective enough. The transformation, well, I'm not going to give too much away, but there's a transformation scene that happens later in the episode. It's just brilliant. I can't believe how well they did with that, especially in 1961. So my honorable mention is The Howling Man. So now we go to number 5, which was second to the last episode of the season. Will the Real Martian please stand up? Please stand up. Please stand up. This aired on May 26, 1961. It was written by Montgomery Pittman. This is the one about state troopers investigating a UFO sighting track footprints to a diner where they try to determine which one of the 7 bus passengers is really a Martian. This is just a really fun episode. It's just a really fun mystery. And it has it has a double twist at the end, really. And well, some people and I agree the first twist wasn't like the biggest twist ever see coming. There's no way anybody saw the second twist coming of the double twist. So this is just a great Twilight Zone episode I would never skip. It's got great atmosphere and great setting with the snow outside and stuff too. really well shot. This is a classic Twilight Zone episode, part of any marathon I would ever do. That's my number five. Will the real Martian please stand up? Number four is a episode towards the end of the season. I'm not sure how people feel about it, but I really like this episode, and that is called The Silence, which is episode 25, which aired on April 28th, 1961, written by Rod Serling. This is the episode about an aristocrat club member who bets a talkative acquaintance he cannot stay silent for an entire year. And I really can't say too much more than that because I'll give away too much of the episode. This is one of those episodes like the very first episode of Twilight Zone, where is everybody? It doesn't actually have a supernatural element to it. This is something that could really happen, which actually makes it an even better episode, in my opinion. But it has a really haunting and creepy twist at the end, and there's also a great lesson about be careful what you gamble. What you're trying to win, basically. But yeah, The Silence is just a really well written, well executed episode. That's my number four. Number three is one of my favorite Twilight Zone episodes of all time, and it was hard not to get it higher than this, but it goes to show you the top two episodes on this list are all time classics. But this is episode 18, The Odyssey of Flight 33, which aired on February 24th, 1961, and once again was written by Ross Serling. I love this episode. I probably watched this as much as any Twilight Zone episode. It's about time travel, which I'm a big fan of, and I know Twilight Zone does a lot of time travel episodes throughout its series, but it does them pretty well for the most part. I'm sure there's not all of them work. I have to sit down and think about it, but and I also enjoy like flying, like airport and plane episodes as well. So that combination was enough for me that I love this episode. This is about a strange increase in speed that causes a jet airliner to travel back in time. That's about as much as I can say. Great performances, great acting, especially by the guys in the cockpit. Um, I just love the flight of the Odyssey. I say the flight of Odyssey, the Odyssey of Flight 33, my number three. It also kind of leaves the episode up in the air at the end, which I think is really cool too. Rod Serling has kind of a cool thing to say to the viewers at the end. So definitely check that one out. Number two, this is an episode that I like every time. Okay, I'm talking too fast again because I'm trying to make this video short. This is an episode that I like more each time that I watch it, and that is episode 26 called Shadow Play, which aired on May 5th, 1961, a Charles Beaumont classic. He was the writer. This episode's about a man convicted of murder and awaiting execution, insists that everything is happening as part of a dream. If you watch my season one, you know that Perchance to Dream was my favorite episode in that season. If time travel is one of my favorite tropes, then dreams and everything to do with dreams is probably 1A for me. This episode's fantastic. Dennis Weaver gives an outstanding performance, but all the characters are great. It just has they do a great job with shadow and light. It's just a brilliant episode. You have to watch Shadow Play. To me, it's an absolute Twilight Zone classic. But of course, there can only be one number one for season two, and that of course is episode 6, Eye of the Beholder, written by Rod Serling, aired on November 11th, 1960. This is of course about a woman who's wrapped in bandages after facial surgery and hopes that she will no longer be ugly. Um, yeah, everybody knows this episode. I think this is one of the all-time great Twilight Zone episodes. Just the suspense that they're able to build with it, the shadow and light that they use in this episode. You really don't see the twist coming at all the first time you watch this episode, and it just kind of takes your breath away. But the biggest reason this episode has to be at the top of anybody's list is it's the relevance of this episode. Whether it's 1890, 1990, 2090, it's always going to be relevant. It's a huge thing in society. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder. Spoiler alert, but I'm pretty sure everybody knows that's the essence of the episode. Definitely number one, Eye of the Beholder, season 2, number one episode. So that's my season 2, guys. I know it was a little clunky and it was a little bit long of a video, but I hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned for season 3, which I'm already starting to rewatch for my next video. Be sure to like this video and hit the little notification bell so you don't miss that upcoming video. Subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any of my great horror content, including the rest of this series. or my next series that I have coming up in December having to do with the holiday season and horror. So stay tuned for that. Thank you for watching. Have a great day. Stay scared. Bye.